something about that's curious to me because, I try to pay as much attention as I can to the wrestling scene, both past and present. Obviously, I'm not as familiar with the UK scene as a lot of people who would be local. At one point, I know, obviously, it was flourishing. You had World of Sport, and then that was taken off the air. For you, when you were a fan and stuff, like, I'm pretty sure that was kind of like the lower point, right, for British wrestling at that point, where it was starting to kind of die off for a little while, right?
Yeah, so British wrestling, there's probably somebody on Twitter who's involved in British wrestling or a British wrestling historian who's probably going to correct me on this. But as far as I'm aware, it got taken off TV in 1988. The Director General of what was ITV decided that wrestling was too lowbrow and he wanted more high-end products on his programming, and they moved it to a graveyard slot really late at night, and obviously viewership fell off. And it was a tired old format that was coming up, that was on TV in those days. It wasn't as exciting, and obviously that was that kind of time, 1988, where Britain as a wrestling scene was kind of stagnating. There was still so much talent, and you look at the guys that came through, guys like Regal, Finlay, Taylor, Robert Brookside, Danny Collins, Johnny Saint was still around, Mike Jordan, lots of guys. There was a lot of talent still, but the format that they were being shown in was really dated. One centre spotlight in a smoky town hall with one solo commentator, the great Kent Walton. But WWF at the time had just got into this rock and wrestling type thing, and there was celebrities, larger than life gimmicks, and some real kind of rock and roll, involvement in the wrestling, all the pizzazz, the fireworks, and the show business. And in Britain, it was for the most part a couple of guys who looked like they'd just come out the pub or from a shift down the mines or in a factory, and decided to have a bit of a scrap, a bit of a straightener, and because of that, that's obviously why it looked a bit tired and got taken off air eventually. And I think I don't think it fared too badly in the late 80s and early 90s in terms of its live touring and live shows. But then I think mid 90s it kind of died off a little bit, and it became a more difficult time for people to get work, especially the wrestlers. And it was kind of a forgotten entity even in Great Britain. And if you spoke to someone in that mid to late 90s and you said about pro wrestling, then that person would then that kind of the instant association would be WWF,
Mm-hmm.
because all that American stuff, because World of Sport or British Wrestling had been off TV for a good 6-7 years by that point, and then the instant association was what they see on TV. So it was either WWF and Superstars and the pay-per-views, or even the on Saturday afternoons they used to show WCW Worldwide on TV as well. So it became wrestling became that American thing over here, and that's when I think viewership in terms of the live events started to peter off a little bit. And it wasn't until the the Attitude Era actually kind of caused a little bit of a boom again, a bit of a resurgence. And it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't British stars or anything.